Chapter 7. Meh. As I started up the stairs, the concierge knocked on the glass of the door of her lodge, and as I stopped, she came out. She had some letters and a telegram. "Here is the post. And there was a lady here to see you." "Did she leave a card?" "No, she was with a gentleman. It was the one who was here last night. In the end, I find she is very nice." "Was she with a friend of mine?" "I don't know. He was never here before. He was very large. Very, very large. She was very nice. Very, very nice. Last night she was, perhaps, a little. She put her head on one hand and rocked it up and down. I'll speak perfectly frankly, Monsieur Barnes. Last night I found her not so gentle. Last night I formed another idea of her. But listen to what I tell you. She is très gentle. She is a very good family. It is a thing you can see." "They did not leave any word." "Yes, they said they would be back in an hour. Send them up when they come." "Yes, Monsieur Barnes, and that lady, there is someone. An eccentric, perhaps, but quelqu'un. The concierge, before she became a concierge, had owned a drink-selling concession at the Paris racecourses. Her life work lay in the pilaus, but she kept an eye on the people of the passage, and she took great pride in telling me which of my guests were well brought up, which were of good family, who were sportsmen, a French word pronounced with the accent on the men. The only trouble was that people who did not fall into any of those three categories were very liable to be told there was no one home. Ches Barnes. One of my friends, an extremely underfed-looking painter, who was obviously to Madame Duzenel neither well brought up, of good family, nor a sportsman, wrote me a letter asking if I could get him a pass to get by the concierge so he could come up and see me occasionally in the evenings. I went up to the flat wondering what Brett had done to the concierge. The wire was a cable from Bill Gorton saying he was arriving on the France. I put the mail on the table, went back to the bedroom, undressed and had a shower. I was rubbing down when I heard the doorbell pull. I put on a bathrobe and slippers and went to the door. It was Brett. Back of her was the Count. He was holding a great bunch of roses. "Hello, darling," said Brett. "Aren't you going to let us in?" "Come on. I was just bathing." "Aren't you the fortunate man? Bathing." "Only a shower. Sit down, Count Mippipopoulos. What will you drink?" "I don't know whether you like flowers, sir," the Count said, "but I took the liberty of just bringing these roses." "Here, give them to me." Brett took them. "Get me some water in this." "Jake." I filled the big earthenware jug with water in the kitchen, and Brett put the roses in it and placed them in the center of the dining room table. "I say, we have had a day. You don't remember anything about a date with me at the Crillon?" "No. Did we have one?" "I must have been blind." "You were quite drunk, my dear," said the Count. "Wasn't I, though? And the Count's been a brick. Absolutely. You've got hell's own drag with the concierge now." "I ought to have. Gave her 200 francs. Don't be a damned fool." She said, and nodded at the Count. "I thought we ought to give her a little something for last night. It was very late." "He's wonderful," Brett said. "He remembers everything that's happened." "So do you, my dear." "Fancy," said Brett. "Who'd want to? I say, Jake, do we get a drink?" "You get it while I go in and dress. You know where it is?" "Rather." While I dressed, I heard Brett put down glasses and then a siphon, and then heard them talking. I dressed slowly, sitting on the bed. I felt tired and pretty rotten. Brett came in the room, a glass in her hand, and sat on the bed. "What's the matter, darling? Do you feel rocky?" She kissed me coolly on the forehead. "Oh, Brett, I love you so much." "Darling," she said. "Then do you want me to send him away?" "No, he's nice." "I'll send him away." "No, don't." "Yes, I'll send him away." "You can't just like that." "Can I, though? You stay here. He's mad about me, I tell you." She was gone out of the room. I lay face down on the bed. I was having a bad time. I heard them talking, but I did not listen. Brett came in and sat on the bed. Poor old darling, she stroked my head. What did you say to him? I was lying with my face away from her. I did not want to see her. Sent him for champagne. He loves to go for champagne. Then later, do you feel better, darling? Is the head any better? It's better. And then they... Lie quiet. He's gone to the other side of town. Couldn't we live together, Brett? Couldn't we just live together? I don't think so. I'd just tromper you with everybody. You couldn't stand it. I stand it now. That would be different. It's my fault, Jake. It's the way I'm made. Couldn't we go off in the country for a while? It wouldn't be any good. I'll go if you like. But I couldn't live quietly in the country, not with my own true love. I know. Isn't it rotten? There isn't any use my telling you I love you. You know I love you. Let's not talk. Talking's all bilge. I'm going away from you, and then Michael's coming back. Why are you going away? Better for you. Better for me. When are you going? Soon as I can. Where? San Sebastian. Can't we go together? No, that would be a hell of an idea after we'd just talked it out. We never agreed. Agreed. Oh, you know as well as I do. Don't be obstinate, darling. Oh, sure, I said. I know you're right. I'm just low, and when I'm low I talk like a fool. I sat up, leaned over, found my shoes beside the bed and put them on. I stood up. Don't look like that, darling. How do you want me to look? Oh, don't be a fool. I'm going away tomorrow. Or tomorrow. Yes, didn't I say so? I am. Let's have a drink then. The Count will be back. Yes, he should be back. You know he's extraordinary about buying champagne. It means any amount to him. We went into the dining room. I took up the brandy bottle and poured Brett a drink and one for myself. There was a ring at the bell pull. I went to the door and there was the Count. Behind him was the chauffeur carrying a basket of champagne. Where should I have him put it, sir? Asked the Count. In the kitchen, Brett said. Put it in there, Henry, the Count motioned. Now go down and get the ice. He stood looking after the basket inside the kitchen door. I think you'll find that's very good wine, he said. I know we don't get much of a chance to judge good wine in the States now, but I got this from a friend of mine that's in the business. Oh, you always have someone in the trade, Brett said. This fellow raises the grapes. He's got thousands of acres of them. What's his name? Asked Brett. Veuve Clicquot. No, said the Count. Mums, he's a baron. Isn't it wonderful, said Brett. We all have titles. Why haven't you a title, Jake? I assure you, sir, the Count put his hand on my arm. It never does a man any good. Most of the time it costs you money. Oh, I don't know. It's damned useful sometimes, Brett said. I've never known it to do me any good. You haven't used it properly. I've had hell's own amount of credit on mine. Do sit down, Count, I said. Let me take that stick. The Count was looking at Brett across the table under the gaslight. She was smoking a cigarette and flicking the ashes on the rug. She saw me notice it. I say, Jake, I don't want to ruin your rugs. Can't you give a chap an ashtray? I found some ashtrays and spread them around. The chauffeur came up with a bucket full of salted ice. Put 2 bottles in it, Henry, the Count called. Anything else, sir? No. Wait down in the car, he turned to Brett and to me. We'll want to ride out to the Bois for dinner. If you like, Brett said. I couldn't eat a thing. I always like a good meal, said the Count. Should I bring the wine in, sir? Asked the chauffeur. Yes, bring it in, Henry, said the Count. He took out a heavy pigskin cigar case and offered it to me. Like to try a real American cigar? Thanks, I said. I'll finish the cigarette. He cut off the end of his cigar with a gold cutter he wore on one end of his watch chain. I like a cigar to really draw, said the Count. Half the cigars you smoke don't draw. He lit the cigar, puffed at it, looking across the table at Brett. And when you're divorced, Lady Ashley, then you won't have a title. No, what a pity. No, said the Count. You don't need a title. You got class all over you. Thanks. Awfully decent of you. I'm not joking you, the Count blew a cloud of smoke. You got the most class of anybody I ever seen. You got it, that's all. Nice of you, said Brett. Mummy would be pleased. Couldn't you write it out, and I'll send it in a letter to her? I'd tell her too, said the Count. The first, I'm not joking you. I never joke people. Joke people and you make enemies. That's what I always say. You're right, Brett said. You're terribly right. I always joke people, and I haven't a friend in the world, except Jake here. You don't joke him. That's it. Do you, now asked the Count, do you joke him? Brett looked at me and wrinkled up the corners of her eyes. No, she said. I wouldn't joke him. See, said the Count. You don't joke him. This is a hell of a dull talk, Brett said. How about some of that champagne? The Count reached down and twirled the bottles in the shiny bucket. It isn't cold yet. You're always drinking, my dear. Why don't you just talk? I've talked too ruddy much. I've talked myself all out to Jake. I should like to hear you really talk, my dear. When you talk to me, you never finish your sentences at all. Leave AM for you to finish. Let anyone finish them as they like. It is a very interesting system. The Count reached down and gave the bottles a twirl. Still, I would like to hear you talk some time. Isn't he a fool? Brett asked. Now the Count brought up a bottle. I think this is cool. I brought a towel and he wiped the bottle dry and held it up. I like to drink champagne from Magnums. The wine is better, but it would have been too hard to cool. He held the bottle, looking at it. I put out the glasses. I say, you might open it, Brett suggested. Yes, my dear. Now I'll open it. It was amazing champagne. I say, that is wine. Brett held up her glass. We ought to toast something. Here's to royalty. This wine is too good for toast drinking, my dear. You don't want to mix emotions up with a wine like that. You lose the taste. Brett's glass was empty. You ought to write a book on wines, Count, I said. Mr. Barnes, answered the Count. All I want out of wines is to enjoy them. Let's enjoy a little more of this. Brett pushed her glass forward. The Count poured very carefully. There, my dear. Now you enjoy that slowly, and then you can get drunk. Drunk? Drunk. My dear, you are charming when you are drunk. Listen to the man. Mr. Barnes, the Count poured my glass full. She is the only lady I have ever known who was as charming when she was drunk as when she was sober. You haven't been around much, have you? Yes, my dear. I have been around very much. I have been around a very great deal. Drink your wine, said Brett. We've all been around. I dare say Jake here has seen as much as you have. My dear, I am sure Mr. Barnes has seen a lot. Don't think I don't think so, sir. I have seen a lot, too. Of course you have, my dear, Brett said. I was only ragging. I have been in 7 wars and 4 revolutions, the Count said. Soldiering, Brett asked. Sometimes, my dear. And I have got arrow wounds. Have you ever seen arrow wounds? Let's have a look at them. The Count stood up, unbuttoned his vest, and opened his shirt. He pulled up the undershirt onto his chest and stood, his chest black and big stomach muscles bulging under the light. You see them. Below the line where his ribs stopped were 2 raised white welts. See, on the back where they come out above the small of the back were the same 2 scars, raised as thick as a finger. I say, those are something. Clean through. The Count was tucking in his shirt. Where did you get those, I asked. In Abyssinia, when I was 21 years old. What were you doing, asked Brett. Were you in the army? I was on a business trip, my dear. I told you he was one of us. Didn't I? Brett turned to me. I love you, Count. You're a darling. You make me very happy, my dear. But it isn't true. Don't be an ass. You see, Mr. Barnes, it is because I have lived very much that now I can enjoy everything so well. Don't you find it like that? Yes. Absolutely. I know, said the Count. That is the secret. You must get to know the values. Doesn't anything ever happen to your values? Brett asked. No, not anymore. Never fall in love? Always, said the Count. The first day I'm always in love. What does that do to your values? That, too, has got a place in my values. You haven't any values, you're dead, that's all. No, my dear. You're not right. I'm not dead at all. We drank 3 bottles of the champagne and the Count left the basket in my kitchen. We dined at a restaurant in the Bois. It was a good dinner. Food had an excellent place in the Count's values. So did wine. The Count was in fine form during the meal. So was Brett. It was a good party. Where would you like to go? Asked the Count after dinner. We were the only people left in the restaurant. The 2 waiters were standing over against the door. They wanted to go home. We might go up on the hill, Brett said. Haven't we had a splendid party? The Count was beaming. He was very happy. You are very nice people, he said. He was smoking a cigar again. Why don't you get married, you two? We want to lead our own lives, I said. We have our careers, Brett said. Come on, let's get out of this. Have another brandy, the Count said. Get it on the hill. No, have it here where it is quiet. You and your quiet, said Brett. What does it men feel about quiet? We like it, said the Count. Like you like noise, my dear. All right, said Brett. Let's have one. Sommelier, the Count called. Yes, sir. What is the oldest brandy you have? 1811, sir. Bring us a bottle. I say, don't be ostentatious. Call him off, Jake. Listen, my dear, I get more value for my money in old brandy than in any other antiquities. Got many antiquities. I got a houseful. Finally, we went up to Montmartre. Inside Zelly's it was crowded, smoky, and noisy. The music hit you as you went in. Brett and I danced. It was so crowded we could barely move. The nigger drummer waved at Brett. We were caught in the jam, dancing in one place in front of him. Hey, are you? Great. That's good. He was all teeth and lips. He's a great friend of mine, Brett said. Damn good drummer. The music stopped and we started toward the table where the Count sat. Then the music started again and we danced. I looked at the Count. He was sitting at the table smoking a cigar. The music stopped again. Let's go over. Brett started toward the table. The music started and again we danced, tight in the crowd. You are a rotten dancer, Jake. Michael's the best dancer I know. He's splendid. He's got his points. I like him, I said. I'm damned fond of him. I'm going to marry him, Brett said. Funny. I haven't thought about him for a week. Don't you write him? Not I. Never write letters. I'll bet he writes to you. Rather. Damned good letters, too. When are you going to get married? How do I know? As soon as we can get the divorce. Michael's trying to get his mother to put up for it. Could I help you? Don't be an ass. Michael's people have loads of money. The music stopped. We walked over to the table. The Count stood up. Very nice, he said. You looked very, very nice. Don't you dance, Count? I asked. No, I'm too old. Oh, come off it, Brett said. My dear, I would do it if I would enjoy it. I enjoy to watch you dance. Splendid, Brett said. I'll dance again for you some time, I say. What about your little friend Zizi? Let me tell you, I support that boy, but I don't want to have him around. He is rather hard. You know, I think that boy's got a future. But personally, I don't want him around. Jake's rather the same way. He gives me the willies. Well, the Count shrugged his shoulders. About his future you can't ever tell. Anyhow, his father was a great friend of my father. Come on. Let's dance, Brett said. We danced. It was crowded and close. Oh, darling, Brett said, I'm so miserable. I had that feeling of going through something that has all happened before. You were happy a minute ago. The drummer shouted, you can't toot time. It's all gone. What's the matter? Oh, I don't know. I just feel terribly. The drummer chanted, then turned to his sticks. Want to go? I had the feeling as in a nightmare of it all being something repeated, something I had been through, and that now I must go through again. The drummer sang softly. Let's go, said Brett. You don't mind? Ah, the drummer shouted and grinned at Brett. All right, I said. We got out from the crowd. Brett went to the dressing room. Brett wants to go, I said to the Count. He nodded. Does she? That's fine. You take the car. I'm going to stay here for a while, Mr. Barnes. We shook hands. It was a wonderful time, I said. I wish you would let me get this. I took a note out of my pocket. Mr. Barnes, don't be ridiculous, the Count said. Brett came over with her wrap on. She kissed the Count and put her hand on his shoulder to keep him from standing up. As we went out the door, I looked back and there were 3 girls at his table. We got into the big car. Brett gave the chauffeur the address of her hotel. No, don't come up, she said, at the hotel. She had rung and the door was unlatched. Really? No, please. Good night, Brett, I said. I'm sorry you feel rotten. Good night, Jake. Good night, darling. I won't see you again, we kissed standing at the door. She pushed me away. We kissed again. Oh, don't, Brett said. She turned quickly and went into the hotel. The chauffeur drove me around to my flat. I gave him 20 francs and he touched his cap and said good night, sir, and drove off. I rang the bell. The door opened and I went upstairs and went to bed. Book 2. Chapter 8. I did not see Brett again until she came back from San Sebastian. One card came from her from there. It had a picture of the Concha and said, darling, very quiet and healthy. Love to all the chaps. Brett. Nor did I see Robert Cohen again. I heard Francis had left for England and I had a note from Cohen saying he was going out in the country for a couple of weeks. He did not know where, but that he wanted to hold me to the fishing trip in Spain we had talked about last winter. I could reach him always, he wrote, through his bankers. Brett was gone. I was not bothered by Cohen's troubles. I rather enjoyed not having to play tennis. There was plenty of work to do. I went often to the races, dined with friends, and put in some extra time at the office getting things ahead so I could leave it in charge of my secretary when Bill Gorton and I should shove off to Spain the end of June. Bill Gorton arrived, put up a couple of days at the flat, and went off to Vienna. He was very cheerful and said the States were wonderful. New York was wonderful. There had been a grand theatrical season and a whole crop of great young light heavyweights. Any one of them was a good prospect to grow up, put on weight, and trim Dempsey. Bill was very happy. He had made a lot of money on his last book and was going to make a lot more. We had a good time while he was in Paris, and then he went off to Vienna. He was coming back in 3 weeks, and we would leave for Spain to get in some fishing and go to the fiesta at Pamplona. He wrote that Vienna was wonderful. Then a card from Budapest, Jake. Budapest is wonderful. Then I got a wire back on Monday. Monday evening, he turned up at the flat. I heard his taxi stop and went to the window and called to him. He waved and started upstairs carrying his bags. I met him on the stairs and took one of the bags. "Well," I said, "I hear you had a wonderful trip." "Wonderful," he said. "Budapest is absolutely wonderful." "How about Vienna?" "Not so good, Jake. Not so good. It seemed better than it was." "How do you mean?" "I was getting glasses in a siphon." "Tight, Jake. I was tight." "That's strange. Better have a drink." Bill rubbed his forehead. "Remarkable thing," he said. "Don't know how it happened. Suddenly it happened." "Last long?" 4 days, Jake. Lasted just 4 days. "Where did you go?" "Don't remember. Wrote you a postcard. Remember that perfectly." "Do anything else?" "Not so sure. Possible." "Go on. Tell me about it." "Can't remember. Tell you anything I could remember." "Go on. Take that drink and remember." "Might remember a little," Bill said. "Remember something about a prize fight. Enormous Vienna prize fight. Had a nigger in it. Remember the nigger perfectly." "Go on." "Wonderful nigger. Looked like tiger flowers. Only 4 times as big. All of a sudden everybody started to throw things. Not me. Nigger just knocked local boy down. Nigger put up his glove, wanted to make a speech. Awful noble-looking nigger. Started to make a speech. Then local white boy hit him. Then he knocked white boy cold. Then everybody commenced to throw chairs. Nigger went home with us in our car. Couldn't get his clothes. Wore my coat. Remember the whole thing now. Big sporting evening." "What happened?" "Owned the nigger some clothes and went around with him to try and get his money. Claimed nigger owed them money on account of wrecking hall. Wonder who translated. Was it me?" "Probably it wasn't you." "You're right. Wasn't me at all. Was another fellow. Think we called him the local Harvard man. Remember him now. Studying music." "How'd you come out?" "Not so good, Jake. Injustice everywhere. Promoter claimed nigger promised let local boys stay. Claimed nigger violated contract. Can't knock out Vienna boy in Vienna. My God," Mr. Gordon said, "nigger. I didn't do nothing in there for 40 minutes but try and let him stay. That white boy must have ruptured himself swinging at me. I never did hit him." "Did you get any money?" "No money, Jake. All we could get was nigger's clothes. Somebody took his watch too. Splendid nigger. Big mistake to have come to Vienna. Not so good, Jake. Not so good." "What became of the nigger?" "Went back to Cologne. Lives there. Married. Got a family. Going to write me a letter and send me the money I loaned him. Wonderful nigger. Hope I gave him the right address." "You probably did." "Well, anyway, let's eat," said Bill. "Unless you want me to tell you some more travel stories." "Go on. Let's eat." We went downstairs and out onto the Boulevard Saint-Michel in the warm June evening. "Where will we go?" "Want to eat on the island." "Sure." We walked down the boulevard. At the juncture of the Rue d'Enfert-Rochereau with the boulevard is a statue of 2 men in flowing robes. "I know who they are," Bill eyed the monument. "Gentlemen who invented pharmacy. Don't try and fool me on Paris." We went on. "Where are you?" "Here's a taxidermist," Bill said. "Want to buy anything? Nice stuffed dog." "Come on," I said. "You're pie-eyed." "Pretty nice stuffed dogs," Bill said. "Certainly brighten up your flat." "Come on." "Just one stuffed dog. I can take EM or leave him alone. But listen, Jake, just one stuffed dog." "Come on." "Mean everything in the world to you after you bought it. Simple exchange of values. You give them money. They give you a stuffed dog. We'll get one on the way back." "All right, have it your own way. Road to hell paved with unbought stuffed dogs. Not my fault." We went on. "How'd you feel that way about dogs so sudden?" "Always felt that way about dogs. Always been a great lover of stuffed animals. We stopped and had a drink. Certainly like to drink, Bill said. You ought to try it sometimes, Jake. You're about 144 ahead of me. Ought not to daunt you. Never be daunted. Secret of my success. Never been daunted. Never been daunted in public. Where were you drinking? Stopped at the Krillin. George made me a couple of Jack Roses. George is a great man. Know the secret of his success. Never been daunted. You'll be daunted after about 3 more Pernods. Not in public. If I begin to feel daunted, I'll go off by myself. I'm like a cat that way. When did you see Harvey Stone? At the Krillon. Harvey was just a little daunted. Hadn't eaten for 3 days. Doesn't eat anymore. Just goes off like a cat. Pretty sad. He's all right. Splendid. Wish he wouldn't keep going off like a cat, though. Makes me nervous. What'll we do tonight? Doesn't make any difference. Only let's not get daunted. Suppose they got any hard-boiled eggs here. If they had hard-boiled eggs here, we wouldn't have to go all the way down to the island to eat. Nix, I said. We're going to have a regular meal. Just a suggestion, said Bill. Want to start now? Come on. We started on again down the boulevard. A horse cab passed us. Bill looked at it. See that horse cab? Going to have that horse cab stuffed for you for Christmas. Going to give all my friends stuffed animals. I'm a nature writer. A taxi passed. Someone in it waved, then banged for the driver to stop. The taxi backed up to the curb. And it was Brett. Beautiful lady, said Bill. Going to kidnap us. Hello, Brett said. Hello. This is Bill Gordon. Lady Ashley. Brett smiled at Bill. I say I'm just back. Haven't bathed even. Michael comes in tonight. Good. Come on and eat with us, and we'll all go to meet him. Must clean myself. Oh, rot. Come on. Must bathe. He doesn't get in till 9. Come and have a drink then before you bathe. Might do that. Now you're not talking rot. We got in the taxi. The driver looked around. Stop at the nearest bistro, I said. We might as well go to the closery, Brett said. I can't drink these rotten brandies. Closery des Lilas. Brett turned to Bill. Have you been in this pestilential city long? Just got in today from Budapest. How was Budapest? Wonderful. Budapest was wonderful. Ask him about Vienna. Vienna, said Bill, is a strange city. Very much like Paris. Brett smiled at him, wrinkling the corners of her eyes. Exactly, Bill said. Very much like Paris at this moment. You have a good start. Sitting out on the terraces of the Lilas, Brett ordered a whiskey and soda. I took one too, and Bill took another Pernod. How are you, Jake? Great, I said. I've had a good time. Brett looked at me. I was a fool to go away, she said. One's an ass to leave Paris. Did you have a good time? Oh, all right. Interesting. Not frightfully amusing. See anybody? No, hardly anybody. I never went out. Didn't you swim? No, didn't do a thing. Sounds like Vienna, Bill said. Brett wrinkled up the corners of her eyes at him. So that's the way it was in Vienna. It was like everything in Vienna. Brett smiled at him again. You've a nice friend, Jake. He's all right, I said. He's a taxidermist. That was in another country, Bill said. And besides, all the animals were dead. One more, Brett said, and I must run. Do send the waiter for a taxi. There's a line of them, right out in front. Good. We had the drink and put Brett into her taxi. find you're at the Select around 10. Make him come. Michael will be there. We'll be there, Bill said. The taxi started and Brett waved. Quite a girl, Bill said. She's damned nice. Who's Michael? The man she's going to marry. Well, Bill said. That's always just the stage I meet anybody. What'll I send them? Think they'd like a couple of stuffed racehorses. We better eat. Is she really Lady Something or other? Bill asked in the taxi on our way down to the Isle St. Louis. Oh yes, in the stud book and everything. Well. We ate dinner at Madame Lecomte's restaurant on the far side of the island. It was crowded with Americans and we had to stand up and wait for a place. Someone had put it in the American Women's Club list as a quaint restaurant on the Paris quays as yet untouched by Americans, so we had to wait 45 minutes for a table. Bill had eaten at the restaurant in 1918, and right after the armistice, and Madame Lecomte made a great fuss over seeing him. Doesn't get us a table, though, Bill said. Grand woman, though. We had a good meal, a roast chicken, new green beans, mashed potatoes, a salad, and some apple pie and cheese. You've got the world here all right, Bill said to Madame Lecomte. She raised her hand. Oh my God. You'll be rich. I hope so. After the coffee and a fine, we got the bill, chalked up the same as ever on a slate. That was doubtless one of the quaint features, paid it, shook hands, and went out. You never come here any more, Monsieur Barnes, Madame Lecomte said. Too many compatriots. Come at lunchtime. It's not crowded then. Good. I'll be down soon. We walked along under the trees that grew out over the river on the Quai d'Orléans side of the island. Across the river were the broken walls of old houses that were being torn down. They're going to cut a street through. They would, Bill said. We walked on and circled the island. The river was dark and a bateau mouche went by, all bright with lights, going fast and quiet up and out of sight under the bridge. Down the river was Notre Dame squatting against the night sky. We crossed to the left bank of the Seine by the wooden footbridge from the Quai de Béthune and stopped on the bridge and looked down the river at Notre Dame. Standing on the bridge, the island looked dark. The houses were high against the sky and the trees were shadows. It's pretty grand, Bill said. God, I love to get back. We leaned on the wooden rail of the bridge and looked up the river to the lights of the big bridges. Below, the water was smooth and black. It made no sound against the piles of the bridge. A man and a girl passed us. They were walking with their arms around each other. We crossed the bridge and walked up the Rue du Cardinal Lemoyne. It was steep walking, and we went all the way up to the Place Contrescarpe. The arc light shone through the leaves of the trees in the square, and underneath the trees was an S-bus ready to start. Music came out of the door of the Nigger Joyeux. Through the window of the Café aux Enders, I saw the long zinc bar. Outside on the terrace, working people were drinking. In the open kitchen of the amateurs, a girl was cooking potato chips in oil. There was an iron pot of stew. The girl ladled some onto a plate for an old man who stood holding a bottle of red wine in one hand. Want to have a drink? No, said Bill. I don't need it. We turned to the right off the Place Contrescarpe, walking along smooth, narrow streets with high old houses on both sides. Some of the houses jutted out toward the street. Others were cut back. We came onto the Rue du Pot de Fer and followed it along until it brought us to the rigid north and south of the Rue Saint-Jacques, and then walked south, past Val de Grace, set back behind the courtyard and the iron fence, to the Boulevard du Port Royal. What do you want to do? I asked. Go up to the cafe and see Brett and Mike. Why not? We walked along Port Royal until it became Montparnasse, and then on past the Lilas, Lavines, and all the little cafes. Damois crossed the street to the Rotonde, past its lights and tables to the Select. Michael came toward us from the tables. He was tanned and healthy looking. Hello, Jake, he said. Hello. How are you, old lad? You look very fit, Mike. Oh, I am. I'm frightfully fit. I've done nothing but walk. Walk all day long. One drink a day with my mother at tea. Bill had gone into the bar. He was standing talking with Brett, who was sitting on a high stool, her legs crossed. She had no stockings on. It's good to see you, Jake Michael said. I'm a little tight, you know. Amazing, isn't it? Did you see my nose? There was a patch of dried blood on the bridge of his nose. An old lady's bags did that, Mike said. I reached up to help her with them and they fell on me. Brett gestured at him from the bar with her cigarette holder and wrinkled the corners of her eyes. An old lady, said Mike. Her bags fell on me. Let's go in and see Brett. I say, she is a piece. You are a lovely lady, Brett. Where did you get that hat? Chap bought it for me. Don't you like it? It's a dreadful hat. Do get a good hat. Oh, we've so much money now, Brett said. I say, haven't you met Bill yet? You are a lovely host, Jake. She turned to Mike. This is Bill Gordon. This drunkard is Mike Campbell. Mr. Campbell is an undischarged bankrupt. Aren't I, though? You know I met my ex-partner yesterday in London. Chap who did me in. What did he say? Bought me a drink. I thought I might as well take it. I say, Brett, you are a lovely piece. Don't you think she's beautiful? Beautiful. With this nose. It's a lovely nose. Go on, pointed at me. Isn't she a lovely piece? Couldn't we have kept the man in Scotland? I say, Brett, let's turn in early. Don't be indecent, Michael. Remember, there are ladies at this bar. Isn't she a lovely piece? Don't you think so, Jake? There's a fight tonight, Bill said. Like to go? Fight, said Mike. Who's fighting? Ledoux and somebody. He's very good, Ledoux, Mike said. I'd like to see it, rather he was making an effort to pull himself together, but I can't go. I had a date with this thing here. I say, Brett, do get a new hat. Brett pulled the felt hat down far over one eye and smiled out from under it. You two run along to the fight. I'll have to be taking Mr. Campbell home directly. I'm not tight, Mike said. Perhaps just a little. I say, Brett, you are a lovely piece. Go on to the fight, Brett said. Mr. Campbell's getting difficult. What are these outbursts of affection, Michael? I say, you are a lovely piece. We said goodnight. I'm sorry I can't go, Mike said. Brett laughed. I looked back from the door. Mike had one hand on the bar and was leaning toward Brett, talking. Brett was looking at him quite coolly, but the corners of her eyes were smiling. Outside on the pavement, I said, do you want to go to the fight? Sure, said Bill. If we don't have to walk. Mike was pretty excited about his girlfriend, I said in the taxi. Well, said Bill. You can't blame them such a hell of a lot. Chapter 9. The Ledoux Kid Francis fight was the night of the 20th of June. It was a good fight. The morning after the fight, I had a letter from Robert Cohen, written from Hemingway. He was having a very quiet time, he said, bathing, playing some golf and much bridge. Hemingway had a splendid beach, but he was anxious to start on the fishing trip. When would I be down? If I would buy him a double-tapered line, he would pay me when I came down. That same morning, I wrote Cohen from the office that Bill and I would leave Paris on the 25th, unless I wired him otherwise, and would meet him at Bayonne, where we could get a bus over the mountains to Pamplona. The same evening, about 7 o'clock, I stopped in at the Select to see Michael and Brett. They were not there, and I went over to the Dingo. They were inside sitting at the bar. Hello, darling, Brett put out her hand. Hello, Jake, Mike said. I understand I was tight last night. Weren't you, though, Brett said. Disgraceful business. Look, said Mike. When do you go down to Spain? Would you mind if we came down with you? It would be grand. You wouldn't mind, really? I've been at Pamplona, you know. Brett's mad to go. You're sure we wouldn't just be a bloody nuisance? Don't talk like a fool. I'm a little tight, you know. I wouldn't ask you like this if I weren't. You're sure you don't mind? Oh, shut up, Michael, Brett said. How can the man say he'd mind now? I'll ask him later. But you don't mind, do you? Don't ask that again unless you want to make me sore. Bill and I go down on the morning of the 25th. By the way, where is Bill? Brett asked. He's out at Chantilly dining with some people. He's a good chap. Splendid chap, said Mike. He is, you know. You don't remember him, Brett said. I do. Remember him perfectly. Look, Jake will come down the night of the 25th. Brett can't get up in the morning. Indeed not. If our money comes and you're sure you don't mind. It will come. All right. I'll see to that. Tell me what tackle to send for. Get 2 or 3 rods with reels and lines and some flies. I won't fish, Brett put in. Get 2 rods, then, and Bill won't have to buy one. Right, said Mike. I'll send a wire to the keeper. Won't it be splendid, Brett said. Spain. We will have fun. The 25th. When is that? Saturday. We will have to get ready. I say, said Mike, I'm going to the barber's. I must bathe, said Brett. Walk up to the hotel with me, Jake. Be a good chap. We have got the loveliest hotel, Mike said. I think it's a brothel. We left our bags here at the Dingo when we got in, and they asked us at this hotel if we wanted a room for the afternoon only. Seemed frightfully pleased we were going to stay all night. I believe it's a brothel, Mike said, and I should know. Oh, shut it and go and get your hair cut. Mike went out. Brett and I sat on at the bar. Have another. Might. I needed that, Brett said. We walked up the Rue de l'Ambre. I haven't seen you since I've been back, Brett said. No. How are you, Jake? Fine. Brett looked at me. I say, she said, is Robert Cohen going on this trip? Yes. Why? Don't you think it will be a bit rough on him? Why should it? Who did you think I went down to San Sebastian with? Congratulations, I said. We walked along. What did you say that for? I don't know. What would you like me to say? We walked along and turned a corner. He behaved rather well, too. He gets a little dull. Does he? I rather thought it would be good for him. You might take up social service. Don't be nasty. I won't. Didn't you really know? No, I said. I guess I didn't think about it. Do you think it will be too rough on him? That's up to him, I said. Tell him you're coming. He can always not come. I'll write him and give him a chance to pull out of it. I did not see Brett again until the night of the 24th of June. Did you hear from Cohen? Rather. He's keen about it. My God. I thought it was rather odd myself. Says he can't wait to see me. Does he think you're coming alone? No. I told him we were all coming down together, Michael and all. He's wonderful. Isn't he? They expected their money the next day. We arranged to meet at Pamplona. They would go directly to San Sebastian and take the train from there. We would all meet at the Montoya in Pamplona. If they did not turn up on Monday at the latest, we would go on ahead up to Bergeti in the mountains to start fishing. There was a bus to Berget. I wrote out an itinerary so they could follow us. Bill and I took the morning train from the Gare d'Orsay. It was a lovely day, not too hot, and the country was beautiful from the start. We went back into the diner and had breakfast. Leaving the dining car, I asked the conductor for tickets for the first service. Nothing until the 5th. What's this? There were never more than 2 servings of lunch on that train and always plenty of places for both of them. They're all reserved, the dining car conductor said. There will be a 5th service at 3:30. This is serious, I said to Bill. Give him 10 francs. Here, I said. We want to eat in the first service. The conductor put the 10 francs in his pocket. Thank you, he said. I would advise you gentlemen to get some sandwiches. All the places for the first 4 services were reserved at the office of the company. You'll go a long way. Brother Bill said to him in English. I suppose if I'd given you 5 francs you would have advised us to jump off the train. Comment. Go to hell, said Bill. Get the sandwiches made and a bottle of wine. You tell him, Jake? And send it up to the next car I described where we were. In our compartment were a man and his wife and their young son. I suppose you're Americans, aren't you? The man asked. Having a good trip. Wonderful, said Bill. That's what you want to do. Travel while you're young. Mother and I always wanted to get over, but we had to wait a while. You could have come over 10 years ago, if you'd wanted to, the wife said. What you always said was see America first. I will say we've seen a good deal, take it one way and another. Say, there's plenty of Americans on this train, the husband said. They've got 7 cars of them from Dayton, Ohio. They've been on a pilgrimage to Rome, and now they're going down to Biarritz and Lourdes. So that's what they are. Pilgrims. Goddamn Puritans, Bill said. What part of the States you boys from? Kansas City, I said. He's from Chicago. You both going to Biarritz? No, we're going fishing in Spain. Well, I never cared for it myself. There's plenty that do out where I come from, though. We got some of the best fishing in the state of Montana. I've been out with the boys, but I never cared for it any. Mighty little fishing you did on them trips, his wife said. He winked at us. You know how the ladies are. If there's a jug goes along, or a case of beer, they think it's hell and damnation. That's the way men are, his wife said to us. She smoothed her comfortable lap. I voted against prohibition to please him, and because I like a little beer in the house, and then he talks that way. It's a wonder they ever find anyone to marry them. Say, said Bill, do you know that gang of Pilgrim Fathers have cornered the dining car until 3:30 this afternoon? How do you mean? They can't do a thing like that. You try and get seats. Well, Mother, it looks as though we better go back and get another breakfast. She stood up and straightened her dress. Will you boys keep an eye on our things? Come on, Hubert. They all 3 went up to the wagon restaurant. A little while after they were gone, a steward went through announcing the first service, and pilgrims with their priests commenced filing down the corridor. Our friend and his family did not come back. A waiter passed in the corridor with our sandwiches and the bottle of Chablis, and we called him in. You're going to work today, I said. He nodded his head. They start now, at 10:30. When do we eat? Huh? When do I eat? He left 2 glasses for the bottle, and we paid him for the sandwiches and tipped him. I'll get the plates, he said, or bring them with you. We ate the sandwiches and drank the Chablis and watched the country out of the window. The grain was just beginning to ripen and the fields were full of poppies. The pasture land was green and there were fine trees and sometimes big rivers and chateaux off in the trees. At Tours we got off and bought another bottle of wine, and when we got back in the compartment, the gentleman from Montana and his wife and his son Hubert were sitting comfortably. Is there good swimming in Biarritz? Asked Hubert. That boy's just crazy till he can get in the water, his mother said. It's pretty hard on youngsters traveling. There's good swimming, I said. But it's dangerous when it's rough. Did you get a meal? Bill asked. We sure did. We sat right there when they started to come in, and they must have just thought we were in the party. One of the waiters said something to us in French, and then they just sent 3 of them back. They thought we were snappers. All right, the man said. It certainly shows you the power of the Catholic Church. It's a pity you boys ain't Catholics. You could get a meal. Then, all right. I am, I said. That's what makes me so sore. Finally, at 4:15, we had lunch. Bill had been rather difficult at the last. He buttonholed a priest who was coming back with one of the returning streams of pilgrims. When do us Protestants get a chance to eat, Father? I don't know anything about it. Haven't you got tickets? It's enough to make a man join the clan, Bill said. The priest looked back at him. Inside the dining car, the waiters served the 5th successive table d'hôte meal. The waiter who served us was soaked through. His white jacket was purple under the arms. He must drink a lot of wine, or wear purple undershirts. Let's ask him. No, he's too tired. The train stopped for half an hour at Bordeaux, and we went out through the station for a little walk. There was not time to get into the town. Afterward, we passed through the Landes and watched the sun set. There were wide fire gaps cut through the pines, and you could look up them like avenues and see wooded hills way off. About 7:30 we had dinner and watched the country through the open window in the diner. It was all sandy pine country full of heather. There were little clearings with houses in them, and once in a while we passed a sawmill. It got dark, and we could feel the country hot and sandy and dark outside of the window, and about 9 o'clock we got into Bayonne. The man and his wife and Hubert all shook hands with us. They were going on to Lanigres to change for Biarritz. Well, I hope you have lots of luck, he said. Be careful about those bullfights. Maybe we'll see you at Biarritz, Hubert said. We got off with our bags and rod cases and passed through the dark station and out to the lights in the line of cabs and hotel buses. There, standing with the hotel runners, was Robert Cohn. He did not see us at first. Then he started forward. Hello, Jake. Have a good trip. Fine, I said. This is Bill Gorton. How are you? Come on, said Robert. I've got a cab. He was a little nearsighted. I had never noticed it before. He was looking at Bill, trying to make him out. He was shy, too. We'll go up to my hotel. It's all right. It's quite nice. We got into the cab, and the cabman put the bags up on the seat beside him and climbed up and cracked his whip, and we drove over the dark bridge and into the town. I'm awfully glad to meet you, Robert said to Bill. I've heard so much about you from Jake, and I've read your books. Did you get my line, Jake? The cab stopped in front of the hotel, and we all got out and went in. It was a nice hotel, and the people at the desk were very cheerful, and we each had a good small room.